الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So, where we last left off in the Durrat al-imaan, Durrat al-bayan fi usool al-iman, we left off talking about the tawheed of Allah. And so, like Iman in Allah. And so we mentioned some of the first things. Of course, when we talk about Iman, one of the first things we'll talk about is just in the existence of Allah. And so this, of course, is one of the things that we'll look into. Of course, we need to have when we have Iman Billahi. This includes first and foremost the existence of Allah. And then after that, like the rights of Allah and also His attributes and His sifat. And so this will come after this as a part of belief in Allah. So he starts off with the actual belief in the wujud, which is the presence or like the existence of Allah and Ta'ala. And so we talked about in the last class about of the things that are evidences for us, and because there's different types of evidences, and while the evidences there's actually a vast amount of evidences, and we couldn't just limit like some of these evidences to one or two like logical paradigms that we come up with, but it could actually be much more than that. And so the author here, he brings some of these, and we talked first and foremost about like the fitrah al-mustaqima, like so like the fitrah, that natural disposition that is uncorrupted. Of course, like a corrupted fitrah is not going to work properly, so it's because it's not going to point in it at its right way. But in general, an uncorrupted fitrah will point to the fact that that Allah exists, because this is something that is natural within the actual like nature of mankind for him to believe this. And we talked about this a bit, and this is where we left off when we talked about the time before when Allah wiped the back of Adam and brought out his children from him, and then asked all of them, alastu bi rabbikum, and they said bala. And so he asked them, am I not your Lord? And they said bala, which is like, yes, you are. And so this, we talked about this, and also a note about this is this pact that in this agreement that was made between them and Allah. This is something that the Rasul, when they give the message to the people, such as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he tells the people that this happened, this is establishing the hujjah, and of course they are held liable for obeying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once the message has reached them, of this happened. Of course, if they don't remember, are they going to be held liable for something they don't remember? This is something some people would bring up. But also a note on this is how many things in the lifetime of mankind do we make a promise to someone and then we forget we made this promise? Are we still held liable for this promise we made to the person? Yes. Like if you made a promise to somebody, or maybe you took a loan out from somebody and you forgot you took out this loan, you still have to pay it. And so just because someone forgot about it doesn't mean that it goes away. And so this is another point on that. So the next thing he's going to talk about is the aql as-sariha, and so he says dalalatul aql as-sariha, and ومنها dalalatul aql as-sariha, and he says from these evidence is clear logic. And so of course, like sariha is something that is of course there's some aspects of like logical reasoning that go from one thing to another thing, and it's very like trying to follow all of the details of it sometimes can be very complex. And so of course there's we'll mention some of these that are the simple ones of understanding like logically that Allah exists, and proving that logically. So here he says فبداهة العقل تقضي أنه يستحيل أن يوجد الشيء نفسه كما يستحيل أن يوجد شيء بلا موجد، كما يقرر أن العدم لا يخلق شيئا وأن الفاقد الشيء لا يعطيه. قال تعالى أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون. And so he says here, in the simplest of reasoning, like the بداهة العقل, and this is something of the simplest reasoning. This is the thing that nobody disagrees with. The simplest of reasoning, what they'll call it's like badihi. These are like facts that are imperatively known within like just they're something we would automatically say that this makes sense. The simplest of reasoning, or like these basic things, is that it's impossible for something to put itself into existence. And so this is one of the ways of looking at it. First off, how can something put itself into existence? This is impossible, because for it to put itself into existence, it needs to be existing first. And how can it put itself into existence without existing first? And so this is the one thing he says here. He says also like this, and just like it is impossible for something to put into for something to be put into existence without a cause. So how do we have something that can be put into existence without a cause? Like there needs to be a reason that something is actually existing. It can't just pop out of nowhere. There needs to be some type of existence, because we have there's a breakdown that the people of mantiq and whatnot, they'll look at in Ahl al-Kalam, they'll say that there's a breakdown of mumkinat, like things that are possibilities, and a possibility never comes into reality unless something push this possibility into it. There has to be something that reason that push this possibility into reality. If this possibility is just a possibility, it can't make it into reality yet without something that pushes it there. And so this is what he mentions here. It's for something. It's impossible for something to be put into existence without a cause. And they would say, like, this is like saying that there's two possibilities. This could either exist or it could not exist. It's one or the other. It either exists or maybe it doesn't exist. And what are we going to use as proof to say that this now exists? If we're going to say it just exists and we have no proof to say why it exists, this is something that is like a logical fallacy. Like if you have something, you need to see a cause for why this something came, or there is a cause, whether or not you know it. And he says also here, and that clear reasoning that nothing doesn't create anything. So of course, nothing can't create something. This is very very clear. And what I mean by nothing is nothing. Like the absence of something this absence can't create something, because this in that case is just a logical and try to put your mind around something that's creating something. Okay, and I would say nothing that's creating something. Nothing can't create something. And this is very simple reasoning, of course, because how can something be the cause of, or how can nothing be the cause of something? It doesn't make sense. And so, and also he mentions here, and that something that is missing something cannot give that something that is missing, And so this is so if I don't have, like for instance, I don't have any money, saying I don't have any money. How can I give that to someone else when I don't have it myself? So if we don't have the ability to put ourselves into existence, then how are we going to put something else into existence? Or if something, or let's go back to nothing here. If nothing doesn't have existence, how is he going to give existence to something that he doesn't have? So this is of the things. And Allah points to this meaning with the ayat that is in Surah Al-Tur. أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. That Allah he mentions to them, are they created without anything? Like, are they created with no مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ? Were they created with by nothing, like from nothing, like without any cause? Am humul khaliqun, or are they the people who created? And of course, there's both of these questions here. It's like this or that. Neither one of them makes sense, and so it has to be. There has to be an actual reason that actually brought them into existence. Of course, and this is Allah. And so this is of the other things. And if you would, going back to some of the ways that the mantiq, like in mantiq they would talk about, or like Ahl al-Kalam they would talk about this, they would say that there would be we would have possibilities, and you have like mumkinat, and then you have these possibilities. And these possibilities, if you were to trace them all the way back, none of them ever come into existence without something pushing it into there. And so one of the examples that they would give is that if you had a list of, they call this like the tasalsul, like the dalil of tasalsul. So if you had one soldier, and the soldier has someone that's supposed to be executed, and so and that soldier is told, he's like, don't fire your gun until you hear a shot. And then until you hear the shot of like this one soldier, the soldier that's next down the line, and that soldier is told the same thing: don't fire your gun until you hear a shot from this person. Don't fire your gun until you hear a shot from that person. If at the end of the line this person fires his gun, somebody broke the rule. Like there's somebody that didn't break. If we have one all the way down, and somebody fired that first shot, you know that somebody wasn't going alongside of this rule. Someone was outside of the ruling of these of all these soldiers that were told don't fire unless you hear a shot first. And so if somebody fired, then someone broke the rule. And so when we have all of these possibilities that are like the possibility for us to be existing, and all of these other possibilities of existence and whatnot, we have these possibilities. The fact that we are in existence shows that something isn't a possibility, but something is actually obligatory when it comes to existing. And of course, this thing that is obligatory, this is Allah, of course, the one that created everything that exists. And only Allah would be the reason that we exist, to put that, because we can't put ourselves into existence. Nobody can put themselves into existence. And even the nature of every single thing that we see is based upon like a lack. Like when we look at mankind, he's constantly lacking things. The sign of like poverty is apparent in every single part of the creation. So if we look at a person, he's constantly growing old, and he's always needing to constantly fix whatever is breaking down in his body or in his house or the things that are in his life around him. And he has to have kids because he knows he's going to die and who's going to carry on his legacy. And all of these things within the universe, every single thing that we see, it's always in this state of decay, and it's never in a state of like this absolute like richness or bounty that never goes away. Everything is always falling aside. So this is also a sign that's written within the creation itself, that we don't have the ability to give existence. We are the ones who are given existence, and we don't have that ability to give that existence with the amount of poverty that is apparent in everything in the creation. And so this is of the evidences of thinking and of the logical thinking. And also the author goes on and he says, وَالْعَقْلُ يَقْضِي بِأَنَّ لِكُلِّ مَخْلُوقٍ خَالِقًا وكما أن الصنعة تدل على صفة صانعها فإن سنة الكون المحكمة تدل على صفات باريها ومبدئها. And so he mentions here, and also as we have the reason demands that every created thing has a creator. So if we have a creation, there's of course a creator. There has to be a creator for there to be a creation there. And then also he says, and just as the created thing leads to, like the created thing leads to the characteristics of its creator, the masterpiece of the universe points to the characteristics of its originator and inventor. Like when we look at the universe and we see all the way from like the biggest galaxies that are out there with all of their complex natures when it comes to physics and all of these, like the massive scale of the universe, which we're barely even tapping into with like the new like space photography and whatnot. And also when we look into even what's in front of us, and we look into just the way that the air is put together, the way that we have the soil in front of us, the way that the soil is constantly rejuvenating with so many like all types of like macro life and micro life that's inside of it, that's constantly generations come and go within like a single day. Generations could come and go within a single pile of dirt of different bacteria and whatnot that are growing and dying and eating the other things, and growing and dying and eating. It's supremely complex, and it's all in this really systematic manner that shows that this is a masterpiece. So of course, when we look at even just like someone who studies ecology or looks into these things, it's impossible for him to not notice that there is a supreme wisdom behind all of this. And this supreme wisdom behind the work, which is the creation itself, points to the supreme wisdom that is within the Creator himself. And of course, if you were to we'll get to this, but if you were to come into a place, and you were to come into a house, and when you come into the house, you see that there's immaculate design. You have all the colors are just really wonderful. You know, they're all put together. The person has like the couch here. He puts this, and you have like, he just walks into a house. He doesn't see the owner of the house. He doesn't know anything about it. He walks into the house and he sees all the furniture set up in a certain way that makes sense. Or even better, he goes into like a castle and he sees all of the fortification of a castle, and he sees this, and he can understand that there's a wisdom behind why is this built this way, why is this built this way. He sees all of this thing. Of course, he's going to know that there was an architect, without a doubt. He's going to know that there's an architect, and he will see the wisdom of that architect in the thing that he designed. And of course, we can see this with Allah, and only an ignorant person would even like suppose that this didn't have like a creator. And one of the I saw like a short clip from like a dawah short. It was and someone put like they had basically they had the dough, and then they had like a box here, a pizza box. They put dough in it. They put like pepperoni. I'm assuming it's vegan, or it's something that's not. Assuming it's not actual beef, or something other than pig. So he had like the dough, the pepperoni, the cheese, and all these things. He put them on little things, and he like just shook, and then it shook it up. And they open it up and there's a pizza. You know, like this, of course, nobody thinks about this. And this is the atheist's logic when it comes to how this works. And so, of course, this is of these things that we understand when we see, like, I don't know how a person can be a scientist, look at the creation of Allah, see the wisdom behind everything, and not be in awe. You know, and be and not believe in Allah. It's very strange that someone would come out of this thinking that there's no God, except that they are ignorant with themselves, and that they're not even opening up themselves to see the signs that are all around them. And so, if this is of those evidences that nobody can deny that there is a wisdom behind the way that things work in the universe, and it's very, very clear that there's a wisdom behind this, and this wisdom points to someone that created it and that made it in this immaculate manner, in this immaculate manner. And so the next thing that the author here he goes into, he says, and also from the evidences, وَمِنْهَا إِجْمَاعُ الْأُمَمِ. And so he says also is the consensus of the previous nations. So of course, like consensus, maybe people don't always look at this, but this is something that all of the previous nations, for ages upon ages, they all had they always had the affirmation that there was a creator. Like this is something they all agree upon, like that there was a single creator. And so he says, وَمَا اخْتِلَافِ الْخَلْقِ فِي الْاعْتِقَادَاتِ لَمْ يُنْقَلْ عَنْ أَحَدٍ إثبات شريك لله تعالى في خلق المخلوقات والتماثل في جميع الصفات فضلا عن إنكار وجوده بالكلية وفي كل لغة وعلى كل لسان تهتف البرية بسم الله قال تعالى أفي الله شك. And so he says here that of them is the consensus of the previous nations. And with all the differences of the creation in regards to various beliefs, like we have all types of different beliefs from different people, of course, whether it was Christians or even like of the other pagan beliefs and whatnot that are from different places that we know about. All of them have this idea of a supreme creator, like a supreme creator God. Even if they don't worship Him alone, they have the idea in their religions that there is a supreme creator God, the one that created all of the things. And of course, this is something that is within them, and it's never been narrated on anyone affirmation of a partner for Allah in the creating of the creation. And this, of course, like there's no multiple creators. Maybe like that actually created the universe itself. Occasionally there will be like things that come such as like a creator of good and bad, but like the universe itself had to have a single creator. And so he mentions here that it's never been narrated to anyone affirmation of a partner for Allah in the creating of the creation, and equal to Him and all of His attributes. And so of course also an equal to Allah, like the one who created with all of His attributes. Is there been an equal to this? And there's always like some type of hierarchy and tier in like the pagan and polytheistic religions. There's always like a hierarchy and tier between them. They never have one that is the most powerful and then have another one that is also the most powerful. Like this doesn't make sense. And this is also of the evidences when Allah mentions what Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam said to the people in the prison with him. He mentions arbabun mutafarriqa khayrun amimillah al-wahidul qahhar. And so he says that are a bunch of arbab, which is like the plural of Rabb, are these arbab they're different and like varying and whatnot. Are they better or Allah? And then he mentions two names of Allah that are very important: al-wahidul qahhar, the one, the qahhar, which is the one who is overpowering everything. And this name al-qahhar also points to the oneness of Allah, because this is of the sifat of Allah that it's impossible for you to it's impossible for someone to add alongside of Allah anyone that shares in this. It's physically impossible. You have an overpowering, all-powerful being. And so this Allah that is the one that is the most powerful, when He is the most powerful, you cannot have another most powerful along. There will always be one person that has power over everything. And in this case, Allah has power over everything, and there's no one else that would ever be able to share it logically. There's no one that could ever share with being all-powerful as well. And this also points to the tawheed of Allah, just the fact that Allah is the most powerful. Like this supreme power, it totally negates any type of partnership within that. And going back to what the author here he says, and so equal to Him in all of His attributes, much less denial of His existence in totality. And so he's like, of course, like we don't have anyone, and of course, like we look back for ages and ages, we never have a civilization that has ever been recorded previously, other than like this recent modern day phenomenon of atheism. We don't have atheism anywhere. For so many how many centuries or millennium, we don't have any existence of atheism until like recently. And this just goes to like it goes to show like just the way that mankind has gone far and far and far astray away from the fitrah that Allah has created him upon. And so and much less in denial of His existence in totality. And this is something that's unheard of when somebody looks into the previous nations. Yes, maybe you have paganism alongside of monotheism, and like distortions of that monotheism throughout the different like centuries and whatnot. But to see that there's actual, just like there is no creator, like this is not something that is ever it's unheard of for someone to do this. And he also says, and in every language and every time, the creation calls out the name of Allah. And so like also in every language, of course, there's different names of Allah that come out within the different languages, but all of the languages, they have a name for, like we would say, God, or like in the other names that in different languages, there's always a name for Allah, and that is known as the God. like the worshipped being, the supreme. And so like this is known within all of the different with every single language, that there is a name for Allah. And Allah says, afillahi shak, and this is a type of is there a doubt about Allah? And this particular, like the way that this sentence is structured is just it's in a way that it's tawbihi, which is like basically saying, are you crazy? Like is there any doubt about Allah? The way that it brings, like, and with Allah is Allah something that someone would have a doubt about his existence? Like there's no doubt about Allah's existence, or that He is also worthy of our worship. There's no doubt about this. This is something that is unheard of. And so like this asking of a question is not like asking a question of asking, oh, are you having a doubt about Allah? No, this asking is like it's in a way of just rebuttal and rebuke. In a way, this particular term is called like tawbih. Like if you had someone and you were to rebuke them, you would ask them a question that they of course know the answer is correct, and this is that type of language that is used here in the way of balagha. And also of these signs, he mentions وَمِنْهَا آيَاتُ اللَّهِ الْمَنْظُورَةِ, and so he says of these is the seen signs of Allah. And he mentions فَوُجُودُ هَذَا الْخَلْقِ وَتَسْوِيَتُهُ أظهر دليلا وتقدير كل خلق بمقدار أجلى برهانا وهداية كل خلق إلى غايته أصبح بيانا. قال تعالى سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى. And so he mentions this, he says of them, and I kind of pointed to this a little before, but he says is the seen signs of Allah. When we look at the miraculous and like amazing creation of what Allah has created, he says here the existence of this creation and its arrangement. As I mentioned before, you come into this house or you come into this castle and you see the wisdom in its arrangement just itself. We don't know who the architect is necessarily, but we know there is one. There had to be someone who saw this. Even if you look at some of the birds and just their color patterns, this is amazing. Like no artist can ever mimic what is on like an average duck, like an average like female duck. You have an average female duck, just the color patterns and like all the different shades and the intricate detail. This is amazing. It's amazing. And so he says the existence of this creation and its arrangement, and from all of these details of things that are living, and the smallest things that are living to the greatest things, and to the galaxies which are living in a huge sense, and its arrangement is the most strong evidence, and the order of every creation with its allotment is the most clear proof, and the guidance of every single creation to its goal is the most blatant sign. And so he mentions this, and some of these things, such as the way that life flows normally, like from the different generations. And also if we look at like birds, so we look at birds and how they go from one place to another. Like when I was a kid, I would see that there would be Canadian geese that would stop in my backyard every single year at the same time. I don't know if these are the same Canadian geese. How do they know my place is a place to chill? But they come from way far away. And then they stop, and then they go to a place way far away. And this is also for the brand new geese that are born. How do they know to do this thing? And all of the other birds that have these intricate migration patterns, they basically are born on one side of the earth, and they know to go migrate to the other side. And like this is something that's innate in that. Who is the one guiding them? This is something that the scientists themselves, they don't know how does the bird know how to get from point A to point B, when we have to have all of these like a compass, and we have to have all this like technical equipment to get us from one point in the earth to the other point. And the bird naturally just flies, goes all the way, and he lands in the place that all of his grandparents and their grandparents and all of their grandparents have been going for centuries. And they automatically just know where to go. and no one teaches them this. This is something that that is like just within their nature, and Allah is the one that guides them to all of these places. This is of those great mysteries, and there's countless mysteries of like from this is just like if we talk about birds, but if you talk about bugs and you talk about all kinds of other plant life and all of these things, there's so many mysteries that point to there must be guidance. There must be a guidance factor that is guiding the creation and all of these things that are here. And Allah says sabbih isma rabbikal a'la, which is to glorify the name of Allah, or like the name of your Lord the Most High. And also the name here also could mean just glorify the Lord your Most High. It's this is the way that Arabic works. Occasionally the ism will be meaning the person of it. الذي خلق فسوى, and the one who created فسوى, and this, and also like this taswiyah, which is mentioned here, this is proportioned it. Like the one who created, not just creating something, like we can create things, but like not like creation out of nothing, but we can form things, but that proportion and how it is formed is a sign of itqan, or like a sign of excellence and mastery, and like a masterful architecture. And this proportion, when we look at this, how does a little fly pick its body up off of the ground and fly? You know, like this is amazing, the way that the proportion is from its body, how much it takes in from energy, how much it puts out, how it gets it back, how it cleans itself, and even the way that its wings are built in such a way, like and when it comes to like the planes that we have are basically us looking at birds and trying to figure out how did they actually get up in the sky and actually keep going, you know. And so like this is how we mimic the creation, because of its beauty and excellence. And if we could mimic the creation in some way, we think that we accomplished something. So like the one who created it, of course, accomplished something without any pattern beforehand that he is mimicking. He's not mimicking anything. He's making the thing that we would aspire to be able to try to mimic. And وَالَّذِي قَدَّرَ فَهَدَى, and this taqdeer, like the one who measured it, or like qaddara, which is like that he measured it or like put it into certain portions. So we have a certain portion of how much we live, and a certain portion of how much we eat, and of the different times within the seasons. And then fahada, and also then guided. And Allah has guided the creation in a very instinctual way. And of course we may, at sometimes we think that we're the ones who guide ourselves. But if we look at the reality of the situation, there's so much around us that we are guided to it, whether unconsciously or just from the actual society itself. But this is just with people. But when we look at the animals and the rest of the life, and also looking at the even like the sea life and whatnot, we see that there is a guiding factor that is undeniable, that Allah is the one that's guiding His creation in a way that we would never be able to fathom. Like, how does a bird go out and go scavenge and come back with a full belly? And like that, how did they do this? And so like there's an amazing measure of guidance that Allah has given the creation, and this points to the fact that there is a creator, and there's someone that's guiding them, and someone that made all of this. And of course, when someone is just amazed when they look at just the color scheme of the universe. Just look at the color scheme and see the beauty in it. It's something that is undeniable to know that there was someone that created this beauty in the color palette. If you look into, like, say, we look at just one of those, like we look at a toucan, or like we look at some of these birds with just the way that their color pattern comes together. This is something that the greatest fashion design artists would gain inspiration from looking at this. He's like, what's this? You know, or the artist that wants to draw things, or the person who is interested in design, they look at these things in the creation and they pull from this. And there's even just in like the green from a tree, you know, like you have a tree, how many types of green come at you in the morning light when you look at a tree? Like just that in and of itself is immensely beautiful. And so like this beauty is something that points to the fact that there was someone who did this, and it's very, very clear. And so, and then of the next things he mentions is, and from them, he says, وَمِنْهَا إِجَابَةُ الدَّعَوَاتِ الْمَلْهُوفَةِ. And so of them is the answer of prayers in times of distress. And this is, of course, is something that we seek. And and he'll mention this, like these answered prayers that people see, this is of the signs that there is someone answering prayers. Like, and this is, of course, one of those signs that a lot of times it actually reaches a lot of people, such as, and maybe even myself. I've made times before my Islam, I made prayers, and then when they would be answered, then I knew that there was someone listening to my prayers and answering these prayers. And so he says here, فَالْمُؤْمِنُ وَالْكَافِرُ وَالْبَرُّ وَالْفَاجِرُ يَشْهَدُونَ بِوُقُوعِ إِجَابَةِ دَعْوَةِ الْمُضْطَرِّينَ عند توجههم بدعاء رب العالمين. And so, like he says here, that the believer, the disbeliever, the good and the evil person, they all bear witness to the reality of answered prayers for those in distress when they turn to the Lord of the worlds. This is something that we all understand, that this happens. Like, this is a phenomenon that actually happens. And he says here, وَلَيْسَ مِنْ شَرْطِ هَذَا الدَّلِيلِ اضْطِرَادُ الْإِجَابَةِ الْحَالَةِ فِي كُلِّ استغناء في كل استغاثة لموانع حائلة أو لحكم بالغة. And so here, لحكم بالغة. And so he says here, and it's not a condition for this evidence to be consistent with the immediate answer to every call from because of preventative factors or extensive wisdom. And so this is, of course, someone could say, okay, you say that this is a evidence for Allah, but I prayed the other day and nothing happened. They think that this is evidence as well. Of course, Allah is He is the Rabb, and we are the abd. So Allah is not going to be at our every call and whim that we say, Allah do this for us, and Allah do this for us, Allah do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and expect that. That's not our placement. Allah does what He wishes. And if we ask Allah to do it, He will answer with what He wishes to answer. But He's not the person He is the boss. He's not the one who is bossed around by the creation, in this sense. And so this is, of course, it's important that someone, like the people who jump up about this and they say, oh, why doesn't Allah answer all of this, that, and the other? Like, Allah is Allah, and He is the one who deserves your respect. And He's not the one who bows to your every whims and desires. You're the one who is supposed to bow to Him and to submit yourself to His will. And this is not the other way. But Allah, from His mercy, He answers these people. And this is of the signs that we do see. Every single person, without a doubt, they have circumstances within their life when they've given out. Like they've asked Allah to do something for them, or to save them from this situation, or to give them something that they thought was very, very far off, and then Allah gave it to them, and then they have it now. And this is something we all have seen this, whether it's even in the individual, maybe he forgets, but he's seen it with other people around him. And this, without a doubt, is that. And of course, this doesn't mean like if someone such as like a Christian and whatnot, or like some other person, maybe they're worshiping all kinds of different crazy gods, because they get their prayer answered. This isn't proof that they're on the truth. This is like, just because someone gets their prayer answered, they say, oh, Jesus answered my prayer. Like, this is what a lot of Christians will hold on to this. This is actually a test for them. Allah is the one who, of course, no prayer gets answered except that Allah answers the prayer by His will. So nothing ever happens without Allah's will. But Allah may will that this person's prayer gets answered from a way that is unacceptable. Like, I mean by unacceptable, that is from like them making shirk or these other things, as a test for this person, and as a test in a certain sense. This is also a punishment for them, because of the worst punishment is that a person would be left to think the incorrect thing without being corrected, and then at the end of the day be held accountable for him believing and rejecting what Allah had, believing against what Allah gave, and rejecting rejecting the evidence that it came to him, and holding on to something that is about to, like, Allah letting His answer be, His prayer be answered in this way, is of the worst punishments, that someone could be left alone to their own demise, in this sense. And so this is of those things that, of course, we see this, and it's something that is apparent. And also the next thing that he mentions from these evidences, and he says, وَمِنْهَا آيَةُ الرُّسُلِ الْقَاهِرَةِ. And so he mentions here in the overwhelming signs of the prophets. Of course, we have the prophets that we've heard about before from the Bible and the books that came before. We knew that there was people that would had revelation given to them, and they would always come with signs that were amazing. And he says, وَلَا سِيَمَا الْمُعْجِزَةُ الْخَالِدَةُ فِي الدَّلَالَةِ عَلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وهي القرآن والمتلو باللسان والمسموع بالآذان والمحفوظ بالجنان. And so he says, and of course, there's nothing like the lasting miracle and its evidences from Ar-Rahman, which is the Quran, that is recited by the tongue, heard by the ears, and preserved in the hearts. And so this is, of course, like we have the Quran, and someone who ponders its meaning, like just the meaning in and of itself, like when you have just the meaning of the Quran, the meaning itself, even as translated meaning, it's powerful and it's miraculous, and it reaches the hearts of individuals when they just read a translation that is a translation of a person, but he's giving the basic meaning that's in the Quran. Even this in and of itself is something that's miraculous, the meaning within it. Now, when you look at the Quran itself, and you see it in its original, like in the Arabic form that it is, and you understand on this, there's a beauty in this that absolutely blows the mind. Just the way that you can look at things, you can look at it this way, you can look at it this way. The amount of meaning that is contained within a single line, or like a single sentence, the amount of meaning that is contained, and the amount of things every time you read it, there's going to be things that pop out of it that you had never seen before, and the fact that it is perfectly preserved and it doesn't change. Alongside of like its meaning that is so powerful, like you could never exchange a certain letter for something else. And what's interesting is someone who, when someone looks into Arabic poetry, and they look into Arabic literature, and also this is also in literature in general, but when they look into Arabic literature, they will see that every single poet, they will come up with a certain meaning in their poetry. They come up with if they came up with something, or they take something from someone else and they try to beat it. They try to one up whatever was done before. So there's a constant, like within the poets, they have a constant like rivalry that they're always doing. They can't just copy paste from the other poets, because this is plagiarism, and there's nothing to boast about this. So they would always take the meaning, and then they would word it in a different way, in a way that was better, or what they think is better than the person that came before them. And they would always do this back and forth. And so there was a back and forth between all the poets with and even not just the poets, but the literature itself. Like whatever they would say, if they had like a speech that they would make, then someone would come and they heard that speech, they would try to say that same meaning or add to this meaning in a way that was better than what came before. And when the Quran came, this stopped it. Like, it did stop them from trying to do this, but they realized there was nowhere to go with this. It's already at the top thing. I couldn't change anything except I would be taking away from it. And this is very clear for someone who looks deep into like literature, and they look into of course the Arabic literature is, yes, specifically, but also just the meanings that come out of the Quran. This is something that you can't find something that's like it anywhere. And you'll find in like some of the previous books, such as like the Gospels and whatnot, you'll find things that are similar, but you'll find that the Quran actually is better than that. And like sometimes you'll find certain meanings that will be in the that will be mentioned in the in like the Injil and maybe in the Psalms or the Proverbs and whatnot. You'll have certain meanings, but when it comes in the Quran, it comes with much more strength and with a much a more powerful way, and also it's more correct and like the actual way that it'll talk about. So you have an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and this comes. And Allah says in a very simple way, فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. And so like this is even just like the sound of it is one thing, but like whoever transgresses against you, then transgress like this is the term, but it's majaz. Of course, you're not doing transgression by and going against them in this way. بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ, with the same as that they did. And so you'd understand from this that you're not to go over this. If you were to go over this by بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ, if you were to go over the bounds of this, no, you can't do this, but you're allowed to do this. And also in other times, you have that Allah will let the person فَمَنْ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ, and so like if someone wants to, in the same meaning here, if someone wants to take revenge in the same way that they were taken advantage of, then they can do this, but it's better for them to forgive. And Allah loves the person who forgives and has a better reward for them. And so in a lot of these senses, you'll have some of these meanings that will come before, and some of them they're severely lacking. Like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Some of this is okay, and there's no problem with this, but also pointing to the fact that if a person forgives, this is even better. This is something that's added to that. And also, when it comes to turn the other cheek, this is something that, of course, like there's so many issues within turning the other cheek that happen. And also like we also have in the Bible that they'll talk about the golden rule that they'll say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that in this similar meaning, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that that none of you believe until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. And so like this is a similar concept for that, but he connects it to the actual iman of this person in a way that is very, very close to home, and that catches this and goes into the actual belief of this person. And of course, inshallah, in the future, this is a project that I hope to go into and bring a lot of these examples and write them out of like some of the differences of where Islam came with similar meanings, but actually trumped the meanings that came before. And this is of the things that, as I mentioned here, the ayat of the Quran itself, the mu'jiza, like the miraculous nature of it, is that when the Arabs, they heard this, they realized there was nothing they could do to improve on it or to beat it. And they always had this, like the shu'ara, or like the poets, they always had this like a desire to beat anything that they heard. They hear this, oh, I can beat it. I can one up them. I can reply to them in a way that's better. And sometimes they would do like a back and forth. You have one guy that gives a share, and then he'll like put down this other person. This other person replies with something that is more powerful and reply, and they go back and forth. But when you have the Quran, it completely demolished that. They had like no hope of replying to this. It was something that, of course, is of the miraculous nature of this. And even Allah will sometimes say what they said, and just will bring this as like just how poor is this, and the way that He replies to them, such as like that they would say that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was majnoon or sahir. And so like a majnoon, someone who's crazy, is different than someone who is a sorcerer. And these are two different people, and so they say that he's both. So they can't even make up their mind. So they're agreed. They're agreed that he's not this and he's not that, and that he must have something of this sort. And there's a lot of like logical arguments that come into the Quran that blow the mind for someone who thinks about it. As we mentioned before, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Like, are they created from nothing, or are they the creators? Like, this is a logical argument that just when someone who ponders it, it really blows their mind. Just the length of it that is there. And so, and for time's sake, inshallah, we'll move on. And he says here, and from them, وَمِنْهَا دَلَالَةُ النَّقْلِ الصَّحِيحَةِ. And so he mentions here, and from them is the authentic text. And he says, وَلَا يُعَرِّفُ بِاللَّهِ مِثْلُ اللَّهِ. He says, and no one can explain Allah better than Allah, for Him to explain Himself. وَقَدْ تَعَرَّفَ إِلَىٰ عِبَادِهِ بِوَحْيِهِ وَشَرْعِهِ. And that He has become known to His worshippers by His revelation and legislation. وَالشَّرَائِعُ اللَّهِ وَالشَّرَائِعُ كَافَةً وَالرُّسُلُ عَامَّةً جَاءَتْ بِالْخَيْرِ عَنِ اللَّهِ جَاءَتْ بِالْخَبْرِ عَنِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And so he says here, and that nobody can explain Allah better than Allah, and He has become known to His worshippers by His revelation and legislation, and all the legislation and all the messengers came with the knowledge of who Allah is, Ta'ala. And so, of course, this is something that also blew my mind when looking at Islam, was the fact of like the Sharia itself, and also the way that Allah is described in Islam is different than any other religion. Like in its great details, with all of the different names and attributes of Allah that come, and also Allah giving examples in the Quran of what He did with previous nations and how He dealt with them. All of this points to Allah and explains who Allah is, and gives us a clear understanding of what is expected of us in relationship to Allah, and gives us an understanding of who is Allah. And of course, no one can tell us who Allah is better than Himself. And He gave us this with the revelation in the Quran and with the Sunnah. And also the Sharia itself is something that is a miracle. When we look at the justice that is found within the Sharia, the wisdom that is behind all of these different things that are done, and how people work with each other, even like the type of transactions, like even the book of transactions, the French, when they looked at the Islamic Sharia, when they looked at the Sharia itself, they were actually blown away, and they took it and they basically based all of their legal basic. Someone who looks into it, they can see that this is taken from the books of Maliki fiqh. And like this is mentioned by some of the scholars who came in. They looked at the French legal way of looking at things. They said this is copy paste from like the Islamic books of fiqh, because of the way that the fiqh that has come, like the Sharia itself, has come with immaculate detail for every single person's life, or came with the guiding principles that lead to unending branches of what this could lead to. So like the Islam or the Quran in general comes with big pictures. Comes with big picture, and the Sunnah comes with more specific examples, and these put together create a cohesive picture for how someone should live in every time, place, and every time and place they have a guidance for how they should live and how they should act when it comes to them, between them and Allah, between them and their family, between them and their community. All of this has been dealt with in the Quran and the Sunnah in a way that is complete. Of course, with Christianity, they have nothing that guides them, and that's why they're always changing from every single age. They don't have any actual, they don't have a Sharia. And the Jews, they have a Sharia that in many times and places it's been corrupted extremely, and is not applicable to every single type of people. And this is something that they can't apply this in a global scale for everyone. And also they themselves, they say, oh, this is only for us, this isn't for the rest of the world. But the Sharia that Allah has given us is something that is amazing, and it makes sure that everyone has their rights in a way that is very, very, very particular. And there's no going overboard in this way, or underdoing it in this way. And so this is something, when somebody ponders the Sharia and they ponder the rulings that Allah has put down, they will come to an understanding. And this is of the strongest of evidences that Allah one exists, and that He has given us the guidance as well. And this also comes from the Rasul as well. And of course, I've read the Bible, and when I read the Bible and then read the Quran, I saw that there was a basic message that was absolutely from Allah. That was something that was not something. It was familiar to me, I should say. It was familiar to me from reading all of the stories of the prophets before. Yes, there's issues in the actual text that are from from the Jews specifically, and also in the Christians. They have lots of issues with the actual authenticity of the text. But the general principle, it's something that is completely known to us, and this general principle is something that all of the Rasul have come before with this principle, and that the Prophet ﷺ, he came with this, and he was sent by Allah, and this is very clear from what he came with, and also the fact that he was ummi, that he was someone who didn't know how to read or write. And a lot of these things will never come about unless someone studies. And so, of course, who was his teacher? Of course, his teacher was not someone, was not some other person from the previous nations, or like some kid teaching him that was like a slave kid, like some of them would claim, or when he went on a journey, he met up with one person on the road, and that taught him all of what he then came with. This is impossible. Like, and the learning even of learning the previous nations, like learning their history and whatnot, is something that's impossible for someone to come with from themselves. Like, they have to go study this, and they have to study it for years for them to know. Or they need to be told by by divine revelation. This is the only thing that would make sense when it comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so also the last thing that we'll stop here with is he says, وَالْإِلْحَادُ فِي وُجُودِهِ تَعَالَى خُرُوجٌ عَنْ أَصْلِ الْخِلْقَةِ. And so he says, and the denial of his existence, ta'ala, is a departure from the foundation of nature. Like, is unnatural, completely unnatural. وَمُقْتَضَى الْفِطْرَةِ, and also from the necessity of natural disposition. Like, the natural disposition leads to, and this leads to the opposite. Like, so when it goes away from the natural disposition, this is very clear. He says, وَبَدَاهَةِ الْعُقُولِ وَصَرَاحَةِ النُّقُولِ وَإِجْمَاعِ الْأُمَمِ. And so, like, someone who goes and denies the existence of Allah, it goes against the foundation of his nature, the necessity of natural disposition, the most apparent of reasoning, clear text and consensus of the nations. Like, and this is something that, of course, the people who actually fall into like this ilhad, or like what he means here by is ilhad, is the actual like atheism. This is something that is very, very far out, and it takes way more belief to believe in atheism. Like, if I mean by belief, I mean like far out leap of faith, for them to believe in atheism than it is for them to believe that Allah created them. And so this is something that's very, very far out there. And of course, there's books that have been written in this matter and whatnot. And there's one that I've been recently going over, which is called al-Azim. And so this particular book is something that I highly recommend if you get a chance to read this book. And I'll send a link for this, inshallah. This book talks about a lot of these things, of the evidences of the Quran, and that Allah sent His messenger, and that the messenger of Allah could not have been making things up of his own, or taking from some other earthly source, that he could only have been taken from Allah. And then it goes into some of the beauties of the Quran when it comes to its linguistic beauties. And this has been translated. I recently found a translation for that. Inshallah, I'll send you all a link on this. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.